in progress.
Can you see if Christopher is on?
I'm gonna make something comment and run away.
Okay.
Just you.
Okay. So, and can you see?
You want me to make?
Minutes
Yeah.
from January, February.
What's
Look
that?
to
Maybe
panelists
copy of
if
minutes
I
from
wanna
January,
post
February.
it.
I've got.
You're both being.
Do their jobs. They kill trees.
Oh, Christopher is on. Recording has started. It looks like Christopher is on. All right. Back to sharing the agenda. It is 4:01. I am gonna call this meeting to order. And, great, perfect. Christopher, if you are on, can you either message us or, pop on to say that there you are. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and since you're unmuted, do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yes, this is Christopher Facundo, public member.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll continue on with questions of committee members first. Do you want to go next?
Andy Scholl, business rep and secretary.
Joan Taylor, residential parking member.
Seth Brandenberger, BID, right?
And Julia Gustafson, the property owner rep and chair. Now let's do staff. David, do you want to?
David Knopke, Transportation Systems Director.
Chris Cooley, Transportation Systems Deputy Director.
Since we've got just two public, do you mind introducing yourselves now?
Rex Seeley,
You're Rex Sealy. That's great. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Mark Roylance.
Sorry, what was your name?
Mark Roylance,
Mark.
ROYLANC.
All right, welcome, everyone.
We have Amber here.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's Andrea, Executive Director of the Tourism Business Improvement District.
You know. Okay, we've done a roll call. We have a quorum because we're all here and a few announcements. We are gonna continue practicing sticking to one agenda item at a time, allowing staff to do their full update, so making note of our questions and then doing questions one at a time, for that subject, period. I've also changed our agenda a little bit to add a public comment piece at the beginning. This was based on a training that the city did last month on this day, about that. So this will be a chance for the public to comment, especially, well, in particular on things that are not on the agenda. Anything that we'll vote on, we'll do a public comment at that time too for agenda items. So I like to open it up to public comment throughout the meeting. The other thing I wanted to do in this announcements period, based on the training from the city, is if committee members have announcements or things they've observed about parking that maybe don't relate to an agenda item, but they would like to say now, this would be a good time, like I've heard from my constituents this, or I've heard that. So I'll add that, and I forgot to prep you guys all that I was doing that, but I'll give my announcement. The Business Improvement District, otherwise known as Gulch, visit the Gulch, I don't know, but BID, Downtown BID, formerly known as Downtown Helena. They have a monthly newsletter, and they were kind enough to include an update about parking. So that went out yesterday, and so hopefully that's helpful for more folks to know, to hear an update from us on parking.
Where is this, if someone wants to find that document?
It's, I don't think their newsletters live online, but if you get their newsletters, you can find it there, or I can forward it to you.
I think it is on the website.
Or the past archives of the newsletters.
Yeah.
Okay, so hopefully it's on
If
your
it's
website.
not, I'll find out.
Great, thanks, Seth. And that, I want to just thank David for checking my facts on that before I sent it out.
Well, that was a collaboration of two people, not just me, so.
Good work, guys. Committee members, other announcements.
Just that you're having the Hellas Citizens Council is having a public meeting on the 25th, right at the library,
An open house, yeah.
open house with transportation. Dave cannot be there.
What's that date?
25th. And
5:30.
the meeting actually starts earlier, but I don't start talking. Which is probably a good thing. It's at the library.
Okay, any other announcements or comments from committee members? Okay, then I'm gonna move it along to the minutes. We have the minutes from January 9th and February 13th. These are posted on our committee page and emailed to board members. Thank you, Christopher, for doing January, and thank you, Sandy, for doing February. Hopefully you've had a chance to review them. I'd like to just vote on them together unless there's any comments. Any discussion on the minutes first? Okay, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the January and February parking advisory.
Anybody want a second? Second.
I second that.
All right, thanks, Christopher. I'm gonna put. Oh,
Mr. Eva Jones? Okay, for Jones.
doesn't matter. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Alright,
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, hearing no opposition, the minutes have been approved for both months. Okay, now I'm gonna move us to agenda item 5, public comment, not on the agenda. And the time is 4:07 PM. I'm going to limit public comment to 10 minutes, even though that's a little high.
Total or?
No,
Per
per person.
Okay.
So if we limit for our committee members, if we limit public comment, we have to limit it for the entire meeting and for everyone. So if I don't set a limit, then I can't enforce a limit. So we got 2 hours. Let's do 10 minutes max. Who would like to go first?
okay, Madam Chair. Board.
We are a committee, but you can also call us a board, and you're welcome to come to the table or wherever you want.
If you can hear me, I'm happy to speak.
Okay.
Here.
Great, introduce yourself first.
My name is Mark Roylance. I'm a former member of the BID until a couple of years ago, and during my time on the BID was also the time when we were also members of the Parking Commission. And I was there during the whole development of the downtown master plan, the implementation of the current parking program as it is. And so looking through the revisions to the parking pricing and everything that went out that came with the BID email the other day. I think the overall goal of simplifying things, rationalizing things is really is a great thing. I felt like some of the pricing that we had, structure we had was overly complex. I'm happy to see it simplified, but I'm worried that there's a very important principle that underlay that pricing that we had that may get lost in going to one price everywhere downtown. And that the underlying principle was, and this came out from consultants who came and evaluated the city, from parking experts, that you want to have your premium parking spots, you primarily talk about 300 and 400 blocks of last chance culture and immediate adjacent cross streets. That you want to price those ones at a premium so that you generate churn of all those parking spaces such that you, at any given time, someone driving down the street will find an open space on every block face. So it can be a trial and error thing to get to what that number needs to be. But the idea is you have paying customers that are able to come see something interesting on the street, pull over within a block, go patronize business, that maximizes the revenues that the downtown businesses realize, and then yet that maximizes the revenue the city realizes too. Because studies show if someone's driving along and sees something and they can't pull over within a block, they're likely to do it. If they can't, there's a good chance they'll just keep on driving. So as you people may recall that 10 years ago or so, there was this constant, all we heard on the park commission was people complaining about there's no parking downtown, which meant there was no parking on Last Chance downtown. Everybody was competing for those spots. It was even worse because they weren't only cheaper, they were free. And they were tinkering with 1 hour time limits, 2 hour time limits. Nobody was happy. Once the whole new program came into effect with the pay stations and the new parking rates, after COVID settled down, because that implementation happened about that time, it was very interesting to see that the pricing we had, there's a bunch of people, it was complex and people didn't like it and they didn't like to pay. It was working really well. I worked on Last Chance Gulch when I was on Last Chance Gulch at that time. And I'd walk out middle of the day and I would see Last Chance full of cars, but spots available here and there, which is exactly where you want it to be. I'm concerned that now with everything priced the same, you're no longer really looking at supply and demand. You're going to have people coming downtown saying, I want to park on Last Chance. I want to park right in front of the restaurant. I want to park right in front of the store, the coffee shop. And if there's no incentive to park further away for people that are willing to walk, that maybe are people that work downtown, that would be willing to pay to walk a little bit if they could pay less. Nowadays, it's like, well, if it's $1 on Cruise and it's $1 on Park Avenue, it's $1 on Last Chance Gulch, I'm going to go park right in the middle. And I'm concerned that what you're going to start seeing is, again, that congestion and lack of availability of spaces on Last Chance because nobody will have an incentive to park anywhere else. Given that most people coming downtown to spend money are probably headed to that area. So my only ask would be to think about, I don't know if it means maybe Last Chance parking needs to be a little bit more, or you need to go back to having 50, 75-cent parking on the perimeter. But I would hope that that's kept in mind if problems start cropping up again, start getting complaints about parking. Because I think there's a pretty decent chance that's going to occur. Thanks for listening. I didn't think I took 10 minutes to do it.
5 minutes exactly.
Oh, no, you're such a good kid. You got me beat.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Are you next?
I'm gonna stand down here, so I'm
Oh.
gonna turn around, yeah, I can back at people's heads. Again, I'm Rex Sealy, I got some stuff downtown, some businesses and properties and things. Used to be on the BID board. I agree with Mark on the parking structure. I think it's correct. We should charge more in Last Chance Gulch and less at other locations. What I kind of also want to talk about is the TIF money. Back in the day when we were dealing with the city and trying to figure out the TIF for the downtown TIF, we were discussing the fact that the TIF money should kind of go to infrastructure, primarily make things better downtown. Sidewalks, curb gutter, fix up the sidewalks, which are really tough shape. That's what I'd like to see the TIF money go. But one of the other things that I believe that TIF money could be well spent on along, infrastructure, making downtown better is parking. And one of the things I think that would be good is if the parking board, commission, whatever your guys are, committee could kind of get together with, Dave and some of the other people and try to get something rolling to spend some TIF money on, say, maybe deferred maintenance, standard maintenance, getting things worked on. And there's a lot of TIF money out there, pay down loans. Because if we can get that under control, because back when Mark and I were on the parking commission, we almost went bankrupt until we restructured the loan on the state fund parking garage. And I'd like to get some deferred maintenance taken care of, get some maintenance taken care of, and pay down the loans if possible. Try to get a fairly large amount out of the TIF, because there's a bunch there. So I'd like to see if you guys that taken care of. That's all I got.
Thank you for your comment. 2 minutes, good work. Who's next for public comment? Chef Cafe?
My name's Dan Bay. I own the Hopper Kitchen downtown. And I'm treading into uncharted waters here, but I wanted to just more see if there had been discussion for people that work downtown, if there has been, how many of the parking spaces are taken by folks who work downtown in particular. My employees are, pretty much the question I've gotten from every interviewee that I've had is, where do I park when I come down to work for you? And how much am I gonna have to pay for it? And if we're, at a flat rate of $1 an hour now for my daytime staff, that's conservatively, we'll say 5 to 6% of their hourly wage is going to parking now. I understand the need to make money, and that's, city running and everything. I'm just wondering if there has ever been discussion about potentially having, specifically for hospitality workers or selfishly hospitality workers. One area I looked at, I guess I'm looking for like a monthly parking pass for downtown employees. The top floor of the 6th Street garage, just on my general observation, seems to be about 60 to 75% empty at all times. I wonder if there is an opportunity for, people that work downtown during the 8 to 5 hours, is there a way to do some kind of a discounted pass and they just are only able to park on the top level of the garage, with a specific permit? I tried to call and get a monthly parking permit for the 6th Avenue garage. It is full. I don't know about Lawrence, but since those are the 2 parking garages that are basically servicing the walking mall. If I can't get a monthly parking pass, I don't think any of my staff can either. We are just basically, we have to pay $8 to $5 an hour no matter what. And just kind of the economics of, are we trying to bring customers down here and, or, potential clientele down here, or, is this just focused on a flat rate of everybody pays their fee and that's what happens? So that would be, I don't know if there's been that discussion or not, but I'd like to bring that forward if we can.
Thanks, Dan.
Can I make one more comment?
No, not yet. I think, let me just confirm that we have no other public comment.
I want to add on to this.
I know you do, but I'm gonna follow my meeting order. Alicia, would you like to make some, you didn't hear, I set a 10-minute time limit, so you can use all your.
Time me, 1 minute.
Okay.
I'm here to ask if we could think about, if you all would consider reduced rates for parklets and a reduced rate for food trucks in terms of parking fees that they have to pay to occupy that space. Thank you.
18 seconds. Okay, any other public comment from the public who hadn't had a chance to speak yet on items not on the agenda? Great, all right. We have a few minutes. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes. Okay.
No, I want to kick in with you. I thoroughly agree. We need to use those upper decks, and hopefully if it would be possible to figure out, and I know it's exceptionally difficult because we haven't done it yet, a reduced rate for the upper decks and, there and down by the state fund. And the other thing that I have a big complaint about, I've had this for a long time, back when Mark and I were on the parking commission, is you guys need to overbook a little more than you overbook now, because there's a lot of empty space. And you really need to overbook the parking as long as there's available space on these bigger parking garages on the upper deck. It's, it just financially makes sense as long as you don't overbook too much, which is not overbooking.
Great, thank you for your comment. I will remind committee members that during public comment, we don't respond to public comment right away. And I'll just say, stick around because some of these answers you may find out. So I'm gonna stop there and move us along. to our updates from city staff, starting with David to talk about the PSA creation with the chamber.
So thanks, Chair. We met with Ally from the chamber. And we discussed basically revamping the videos that are currently on the parking website. So that they can, so people can relate to the folks in the videos, because everybody that's on those videos now has retired or left the city or whatever. So we're gonna revamp some of those with Callie. To put the new staff on there, so the faces, they can match the faces up. And then we're gonna work on a few, just kind of informational. Come down park, but show them the ease that parking can be downtown. And we were waiting for the weather to, when we had this meeting, the weather was still crappy. And we were waiting for the weather to turn so that we could get the outside and have those filmed. So should be coming up in the next couple months. We didn't have a set date, but it's on Callie's radar and the things we're gonna discuss, so.
Great, thank you. Committee members, any question on the PSA creation? Great, I'm just gonna keep it on the agenda, so we'll ask you every month until it's done.
Okay.
Next, update on the license plate reader and the online ticket payment rates, and by that I meant like, are people paying the tickets online? Not how much do they cost?
So the license plate reader vehicle is up and running, doing well. We've worked out some of the little hiccups that we've had. I think we still have a couple. It's kind of a learning process. I'm going to pick on Chris's truck. So he has an Army plate on his, and the way the license plate reads his numbers, it picks up the night that's behind in an outline. So it obscures, it makes it just one giant blob. And so the license plate reader.
Right, so the image in the background of the plate is also a reflective material, even though it blends in the background, you don't notice it if you look at the plate with your eye. The camera catches it and it kind of just turns that part of the license plate into a big blob. So it misses a letter. We can fix those manually as we catch them. And then, the system will learn a little bit as it goes, as you make some of these corrections. And the next time it comes to my license plate, it'll remember oh yeah, that blob has a letter here and this is what they said it was.
So these past few weeks and months, as some of these issues have come up, the PCOs are getting out and correcting the plate inside the system. So the next time it recognizes the plate. So. But it's working well. And as far as the online ticket payments, they're using the online appeal process. And yeah, I think everything is going pretty well. We've run into some things where through the process, when they brought over the data, if you had an expired permit, then that didn't get brought over. So we've had one or two of those instances where people have called and said, hey, why am I still getting your bill, and it was expired. But we're working through those. So fewer hiccups as we keep rolling on. So it's working on.
Thank you. Questions for David on this agenda item? Yes, Sandy.
So David, on Chris's plates, we know which plates they come from. Can you put it, instead of doing plate by plate, can you put the image into the system and say?
So it knows it now. So it knows that Chris's plate.
It's Chris's, but I mean, can you do a generic, like, can you go down and take an old plate?
No, because it's unique to each plate.
Okay.
So if it's
Thank you.
5-1-2-3-4.
I got it.
So the camera
I got it.
license plate reader company puts a multitude of the state's license plates in its database. So the software has this example of, 40 or 50 different variations of Montana license plates. And that's how the software learns a little better. It knows the patterns and backgrounds of the plates. But as you know, Montana has like a gazillion different choices of license plates, so they don't have them all.
I was just thinking if you could run into problems like, certain, nonprofits or whatever that was popping up, if you put that plate in there and it would learn, but. Sounds like it's one by one.
It is one by one.
Yeah, because
Remember, we're gonna try not to do a lot of crosstalk, but answer that question.
It-
and then we'll be-
it captures however many numerals or letters that it recognizes. And like in Chris's case, that blob. So now they recognize that unique. And then it's also beautiful, so the PCOs get out and verify them.
So I have
Dawn,
a
yes.
question for people who are not on the app. Do you send, like, tickets out to people still, put them on their windshields
Tickets are
anymore,
put on the windshields.
just like they did?
Yes.
So just so you guys know, we had 100 tickets paid online. Looks like in the month of February.
How's that compared?
It's the first month we had it.
100 more than last February.
Seth, any questions?
No. No, I think I'm good.
Christopher, any questions?
No, don't have any at this time.
My question you couldn't answer, but I wrote down that you had 180 tickets paid in January. And so
That was
they're probably
a
back.
little bit more than just January though, so that was like our first month that we got a bill for, that's how many tickets got paid. But it was a little more than a month time. So to give you an example, Sandy, so February, we had about 100 tickets paid online. So far in March, we also already had 100 tickets paid.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you think that is because the vehicle's getting out there and being more consistent about giving tickets, or do we think people aren't learning how to use the machines?
I think it's a combination of things. One is that, yes, we're back to enforcement and we are writing tickets again. The other one is, I think people find it convenient, that they don't have to come here to pay. I think that was a huge barrier in the past that. And they knew there wasn't really a big consequence if they didn't come down and pay their parking ticket. So if they weren't gonna be here, they just didn't come here and they just let it ride. I think most people want to follow the rules and do what they're supposed to do. Now that it's convenient, they just pay it.
So you can't mail them in anymore?
You can. You can still come to the office, you can still mail them in with a check, you can still do all that.
So my question about the meter reader is that they still have to stop if they find someone who's not in compliance. Get out and put the ticket on the.
So generally
Or
what they're
something.
doing
Yeah.
is they'll drive down a block or so, right? It'll get all the hits and all the information and they'll stop at the end of the block and they'll just go down the line and drop the
Oh.
ticket.
But part of that is to verify the license plates, so that what the LPR saw is what really is the license plate, because there's a lot of license plates out there that are damaged. Like, people running into their hitch, and so it may interpret that O as a B. So part of that is the verification that we're issuing the ticket to the proper license, proper vehicle.
Thank you, guys. Let's move on to coin meter replacements.
So, thank you, Chair and committee members. We got the approval from this committee last time for the plan moving forward. We were just waiting for the weather to get a bit nicer so that they could get out there and start removing them. If the weather holds, I see them starting to come out and replacing them as we get signs in. We had to order extra signs for the permanent parking, for the 2-hour parking. So we'll probably start at the core and move our way out to the outskirts.
Questions for David on the coin meters. These, for folks in the room, these are the Lollipop standard meters, are getting replaced to be a combination of either 2-hour permanent parking or Pay to park, hourly pay to park. Any questions for David on that? Great, I have one. We had talked about there was 198 of those, and then in your numbers you sent back to me, it was 180. Not a big deal, but are some, my question is, are some staying or were our numbers just wrong?
They're all going,
Okay, all meters are going and will become something else. There will be no physical
180.
meters.
because the fact is they don't talk to our passport. It's a totally different system, so.
How long will think it take to get? You say how long is this project staying? I hear them.
Some of it's gonna be budget constrained. We don't have a lot of cash left over. So as we can get the signs in, as we can get the posts in, we'll swap them out.
This is a spot to answer the question about how we're using permit parking and employee parking.
All right, yeah, sure, I'll be the chair and I'll do what I want.
Yeah, there you go. You can answer Dan's question.
Well, it will be part of our normal updates. So as the chair, I'm just gonna comment that, you know, in the last few months, we've been working with city staff to identify permit spots that are on-street spots that could be offered for a half-time or full-time, because any permit you can get, you know, for the full-time. But there are special zones that you can get for 4-hour chunks of time. And the idea is that's for service industry employees. And those permits are $30 a month. And now with the license plate reader, you can buy one permit and have multiple license plates in that permit. You know, for those who may drive different cars to work during the day, or maybe for employees that work different shifts. A caveat on that is if there are multiple license plates on a permit, the first permit to get tagged by the license plate reader uses it for that day. So you could get the other license plates could get ticketed if they both try to use it at the same time. And with that meter reduction that the swap of meters, there are areas on Cruise and Park, both North and South Park, and really North and South Cruise. There are several areas that these spots will be available, and you need to just call the parking permits and ask for an on-street permit spot. Great, we answered that question. All right, let's.
So it would also be managed by you. You could go in, you could adjust like, oh, I want this license plate, but not this one anymore. You would be responsible for putting in the license plate or whatever. So it might be someone comes in at 3, they would use that property, or at 2, and they stop tagging at 5. So you wouldn't need to give a longer, they would need to pay for more than that. You might have a morning staff and an afternoon staff, or a Monday, Wednesday, so that you can share those. Doesn't have to be the same person with 6 cars.
Okay.
You just have to decide, but you're the one who's in charge of that,
Okay.
not. Perfect.
The permit owner is the one that's
Yeah.
in charge of it.
But
And
which-
anybody can
You'd be
buy
the
a
permit owner, so you could own it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn, is that?
Nope, you can't talk, sorry.
Perfect.
All right, lay down the rules. All right, we're gonna move on, because we'll have more public comment, because we're gonna vote on stuff, so. But thank you for being here. We're gonna move on to budget presentation. You guys, we don't know what to cover.
You're doing a great job.
Budget presentation, do you guys have something to present? Who will be presenting, Chris or David?
So I would have something, I brought you something.
Is there dancing goats?
There's no dancing going, I don't have time for that.
Last meeting I went to was pretty good.
Well, I mean, you haven't seen one of my real presentations.
Wait.
There. It's already shared. What's already shared?
You're already a panelist, so.
Yeah, I'm a panelist, but I can't share. And I'll send you a request for the 2.
Oh, well. Color.
I was trying to get the whole thing in one view, but I'll make it bigger. So we'll go through the main piece here first. So this is the high level sort of summary of our budget. And If you've ever followed the city's budget process in the past, this is pretty similar to our cash flow summaries that we have. So along the top line there, revenues in the middle section, operating and capital items, total expenses, and then our actual cash flow, so either revenue over or under our expenses. And then beginning cashes, ending cashes. Reserve requirement, which there are policies in place that say, depending on the type of operation you are, you either need 15% of your operating budget or 60 days of operating time, one or the other, whichever one's higher. So I gave you fiscal year 24 actuals since we finished that year. And then compare that to where we're at. So the FY 25 actuals, so the year we're in now, those are like, I pulled those at the beginning of February when I started this process. Haven't had a chance to update those yet. So keep in mind, that's just barely more than half the year. The difference between the R budget and the A budget, the A is what we adopted. That's our base budget. That's, no continuing projects, no extra items. That's what we adopted as our typical every year standard budget. The R is the revised. That one includes any projects that we had ongoing in the previous year that we carried that budget forward to the next year. And then my final column, we had a little process in-house here at the city that we had kind of status quo and non-status quo. So I named mine the non-quo. The status quo when it comes to parking is a little bit irrelevant because with the things that we've had in staff and stuff recently, most of the changes we were asking for the next fiscal year actually got implemented right away. So my non-quo really is my budget because that's already how things exist now. Kind of the best way I could explain that one. So for the next year, you can see revenue estimates. So this does include some estimates of rate changes. So we're not sure exactly where that's going to land. Our recommendation is probably going to be somewhere in the range of $5 per month on the permits. Since we just changed the entire hourly structure, probably no change to the hourly structure at this time. And then moving down into expenses. So operating, that's our personnel cost, our office supplies, sort of the day-to-day kind of stuff. It also includes our debt payments that we have. And then our capital expenses, those are our projects or a vehicle or things like that. So as it stands right now, you can see when we adopted the budget last year, we were about $1,800 to a deficit, for lack of a better term. This year, we're pretty close again, about $2,800 right now. That's a soft number at the moment. So we haven't had any meetings with the city manager, the commission, anything like that. So that's just our sort of base, get started with our budget. You can see that that'll put me beginning cash about 400,000. That includes, all the projects that we have ongoing right now. And then estimated to end at about 396. Our requirement to keep in our reserve is about 330. So we meet the requirement per the city's policies, which is always good. If we don't meet it, we have to turn in this big, long, complicated plan that says how we're going to get back to meeting it within the next year. So that's the overall budget. I'll stop there. If you have any questions about the summary level.
You do like a 1 sentence summary that I can put in the minutes and then we'll get a copy of it.
Sure.
Is that the best way to get a copy of it?
Yeah.
I don't know how to wrap that conversation.
Well,
Minutes.
for the minutes, it can be Chris presented
Okay,
his draft
okay.
budget.
I like
We
that.
discussed
Okay.
it.
Chris presented a balanced budget. It's pretty close to, out of $2 million, 2,800.
An almost balanced budget.
That's acceptable in any audit.
We don't need the numbers in the.
Okay.
Okay. Questions for Chris at this time? Zach?
Okay, what was the reserve amount again? It's 300.
So the reserve requirement is
Right.
330,000. And that's based on, I can click in there.
The bottom one
Show you
you
the
said.
formula. So it's either 15% of our operating budget or 60 days worth of operating expenses. whichever is greater. So if you take our $2 million operating budget, either 15%, or if you divide that by 365 and then multiply it by 60 days, whichever of those two numbers is higher, that's the number. So it comes out to 300.
Other questions for this part? You're not done, right? You-
No, I'm not done.
Okay, other questions at this point? From committee members? Okay, I can't see Christopher, but let me see him just in case he's,
Change the view, sorry.
I just want to check. Okay. Continue, please.
So I won't go line by line with you guys, right? Go dollar through dollar on everything. You know. The biggest thing, I'll kind of talk about it in categories. So when it comes to personnel. We made some changes in the personnel realm, so, getting rid of the admin 3 position, which did our special event coordinating. And then sort of raising an admin 1 to an admin 2, and that doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but basically giving a little more responsibility to a lower level admin position. Taking some of the responsibility that we no longer have away. So we made that change, a couple other smaller tweaks on the personnel, and ultimately it's about a $40,000 savings from 25 to 26 by making those changes. So that allowed us in the rest of the operating budget to put a little bit in for things that we did not have this year. So in this year, we were very constrained. We had a very limited materials and supplies budget. Where typically in the past, they were, healthy enough that we didn't have to like go buy nuts and bolts one at a time as we needed them. So we've had to do that this year right now with the budget constraints. So in next year, we were able to bring those back to a little bit more of a comfortable level so that, our maintenance guys and our operations supervisor don't have to come to myself or David every time they need to go spend $20 to make sure that they're sticking in line with their budget. For debt service, and I'll be honest, I made a couple of tweaks at the last minute because I just heard from the city's controller. We had thought that one of the debt payments had finished in February with the last payment that we made. Come to find out, it did not. We had one more in August. So that was an unfortunate setback in our planning. So I made a few adjustments as I could to account for that, but it's a $90,000 hit. So it moved things around a little bit. So the good news is it for sure is the last payment this time. So next year we'll be in a little better position again to start addressing some of the deferred payments. So we're going to address a little bit of it in FY26, and I'll go into what those projects are here in a second. Not as much as we had hoped to get to. So.
Pause, I have a question. Will you remind us what the debt is for? Because I think there's a couple
Sure.
debt pieces.
Sure. So the one that we have the one more payment on is the Jackson Garage. So there's a $90,000 balance, one more payment in August. The second one that we have out are the kiosks. And that has about I believe she said a $275,000 balance. And it is $80,000 a year. Maybe.
Estimates.
Yeah, don't quote me on that one yet. But then we have the last one is the 15th Street Garage, has a balance of a little over $5 million and is about $480,000 a year. About 480.
And what's the total?
About 5 million is left on that. Sure. Okay, So the approach that we took here, when it came to trying to address this, so we got a list and an assessment from the Walker Group out of Denver. They basically gave us a 10-year plan and said, here's everything you should address year by year, and here's how much it would cost you each year. The first year was pretty hefty. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like $1 million worth in the first year that should be done. Knowing that we don't have that kind of money to spend in year one, we went through and we identified what are the things that we can do that will have an impact on our operation and are higher on the priority when it comes to safety. That was the thought process we took in deciding what we could try and fit in there, so.
When does your one start? Excuse me.
Right,
This year?
with FY 26 technically.
Okay.
Yeah, so in July. So you can see, so Sixth Avenue garage, about $12,500. I can,
Oh, those are on the left are numbers.
yeah, so the
Those are
stuff on the
your
left in the
deferred
blue,
maintenance.
yeah.
Okay.
The stuff on the left here in the blue are the individual items. So the 45,000 is the total of what we're trying to pay.
Sorry, to clarify, so buildings means deferred maintenance,
Buildings means the type of asset that we are doing. work on.
investments.
So you're saying recommended $1 million, but you're come up with 45,000.
Correct.
Okay. I see a little red there.
Came up a little short.
That's okay.
Good
Hey, you
clarification.
got some.
See, my 2,800 doesn't sound so bad now, does it? So in Sixth Avenue, a little over $12,000 worth of maintenance to address. 15th Street, about 9,000, Jackson, 18. And the Medical Arts Garage, about 5,500. So these are all safety related items. There's either, potentially loose concrete or other materials that we need to get cleaned up, such as a fall on somebody. These are, seals to keep water from getting into the cracks and the foundation, rotting some of that stuff out. So items like that is what makes up these numbers. The one thing that's not necessarily in the capital, so some of the things that we're gonna try and get done internally that we're just able to do a lot more inexpensively ourselves, is some of the items were like paint the lines in the garage, right? So that was some of the stuff that was in the first year. So a lot of that stuff, I put just some money in our regular operating budget to buy paint. And we have a paint machine that we can utilize and our staff that we already pay for, that doesn't cost us any extra money. So buy some paint, use the paint machine, go out and paint them. We don't have to hire an outside third-party contractor to do that kind of stuff. So we will get a little bit more done than just the safety-related items, but not from a capital standpoint. And then, so below that, vehicles, this one is kind of an iffy one, so we just outfitted our patrol vehicle, with all the fancy new software and cameras. But it is been on its last leg for a while. We actually had money in FY 25's budget to replace the vehicle. And with the cost of the software, we kind of just rolled it into one, and that's what we got instead. We wanted to get the software and get the operation in place. And then it's just a matter of us doing a little bit of wiring and transferring the cameras to a new vehicle. So we're gonna keep that as inexpensively as we can. Police department surpluses their vehicles, which is what our current vehicle is now. It's an old PD surplus. So we'll try to acquire another one for as little money as we can for that process again. And again, it won't last as long as a brand new vehicle would, but it's a much better deal than having to go out and pay $40,000 for a brand new car. Again, trying to stick with what we can afford but still be efficient in the operation. What we don't want is the car that we have now to get to the point that it just stops and then we have the software that we can do nothing with, that we've invested all this time. that's the general spiel. So I wanted to go through capital specifically. Again, like I said, operations, I called out the changes in personnel specifically, but the rest of the operations budget is pretty standard. It's, couple $100 here, a couple $1,000 there for paper or what, there's nothing really out of the ordinary in our regular operations.
So standard compared to other years.
Okay, questions for Chris on this piece? Zach?
I guess the question is, it's obvious, there's not a deferred maintenance. And there's multiple deferred maintenance items that don't even make the list. For instance, all your parking lot entrance aprons have deteriorated. They don't meet ADA, there's too much cross slope. Your asphalt's popping, and your landscaping is looking pretty rough. And so I'll go back to the public comment we had for Rex about possibly dipping into the tip to address some of these issues.
Could you tell me what the TIF is?
Are you done with
I'm
the
sorry.
comment?
Yes.
Joan, what's your question?
I'm wondering if you could tell me what TIF is, what it stands for.
Great.
Should-
David or Chris, would you like to answer
Is that
first?
too complicated?
No, it's relatively, so the TIF is a tax increment financing, TIF.
Okay,
It's a tax designation that gets put on a certain area, you put a boundary around it. To where, as simple as I can put it, the increased value in properties in that boundary over time. Some of that tax money is pulled aside. And so you get the same amount that you've always gotten going to the general tax. And then that little bit of extra that's more now as property appreciates and taxes go up, kind of gets put off to the side in its own pot to do infrastructure type improvements in that boundary.
Do you know the TIF number? Anybody know the TIF number right now?
I don't know what it is right now, but I think it is coming up on 2 million. Possibly.
2 million a year that's available to be given out.
But yeah, I don't have a problem telling you, we would love.
Here's the thing, everybody knows that property values have gone way up. And
So it's TIF.
that just money has gone to that additional tax has gone to. So it's sitting in a pot.
Sorry, Joan, did you have a follow-up question from your question?
how do you access that?
Through an application process. There's a board, kind of like your committee exists,
Uh-huh.
there's a board that oversees that district, that TIF. And you can make applications to that board with your project idea. They'll vote on the projects they would like to approve to.
The commission recently made a change to the boards, the TIF boards, they combined them. So there's just one TIF board. They haven't all been seated yet, but hopefully it'll be a little bit more consistent, streamlined process with the same people making decisions for all 3 boards instead of 3 subboards.
I would like. This is a TIF question. Sandy,
Does this committee have the authority to put in an application? I mean, is
I'll
that,
direct that question to David.
I don't think so. I think the better route would be to make a recommendation to apply for TIF funding to the commission. And then that way they know it's gone through this process, through this public process, and then parking itself would make the application to.
so
Typically, the property owner that is within the district would make an application for money to do improvements to their property.
but if we as a committee wanted to get $1 million to pay down the loan or to fix something, how would we do that?
Parking.
You would make the recommendation as we recommend, pass it on to the commission. The commission says, sounds good. Parking, go ahead. Parking would then, as the owner of the Sixth Street Garage or whatever would make the application for those funds or parking wide to address deferred maintenance across all the structures. We would make the application and then it would be reviewed by the committee.
And how do we go about doing that?
I might
And then-
pause you
yeah,
now,
yeah,
because we're
yeah.
gonna come to recommendations a little bit later in the agenda. Where are we now? Parking budget, Christopher. Show me Christopher.
Yeah, I don't have any questions at this point.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to check in since you're on Zoom. Okay. Question. Oh, where this Walker Group, deferred maintenance assessment, where does that live? Is that something we can have? And I put, that I wanted to spend more time looking at that report. Can we do that in April? Or can we have that?
Is it on?
I don't think it's on the said website, but we can get it to everybody or put it on the website to access so that community members can peruse it over the next month and then we can have a more in-depth conversation about the deferred maintenance in April.
Great, okay, so let's do that. So I have it that it's on the April agenda. And I'm asking staff that we want to have access to that. The committee members want to have access to this report from the Walker Group.
Let me just confirm, so you're following the Walker report's recommendations? Pretty much.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I need.
Where we can.
As much as we can afford.
Yeah, I'm just checking to see if it's, we can all look at it, but you're not following it.
Yeah, so the items that make up my $45,000, each of those is an item that they called out in their report. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. You kind of talked about deferred maintenance in your budget. Did you have anything you want to add, or that was your,
That's mostly it, I think.
Okay. just wanted to make sure so we don't. What Mike just said, we'll do more in April. All right, then I want to move on so that we have plenty of time to talk about Helena tourism and the tourism data. So Andrea, I might just start with you. If you could give the committee a brief overview of the tourist experience downtown. And then, or you say what you want, but we want to talk about tourists.
Yes,
All right, so I'll turn it over to you.
absolutely. And I don't, are you able to pull up the?
Yes.
Great.
Oh, there we go.
Well, there it is.
So Kelly did pull some data from, Placer AI, which, kind of highlights, the most, insightful pieces. Looking at the number of visits per year downtown, is 1.7 million is what we've been seeing. That includes both local and non-local that are coming into the downtown zone, if you will. And where visitors is, out of zip code, 260,000. The average dwell time that we're seeing is, a little over 2 hours. And, you can kind of see those trends year over year. I will point out that obviously, we're just going into peak season for this year. So we anticipate those numbers coming up. And then it does give you a little bit of the audience overview. Their average, income is over 73K. The median age is over 40. And, a little over 2 persons per household. And then I thought that was kind of interesting, the visitor journey, just looking at prior to coming downtown and then post.
Sorry, should you scroll more?
Oh, yeah, it's so sorry, that's a little bit lower than the very last one.
This one?
Oh, one more down, sorry, I kind of skipped.
A map? I want him, I
It's
want
kind
him
of
to
the
match.
loop, it's
what
that
you're-
one, this one.
Okay, so explain what we're looking at.
Yeah, and so that is just looking at where they were prior to coming downtown
Okay.
and their journey after they left downtown. So a lot of them coming from home to downtown, and then after leaving downtown, going back home. The next most common was work. And so on. So yeah, it's kind of the high level overview. I'm not sure with favorite places because it shows Walmart in here, so I thought that was kind of, unless that's showing the journey of where they were going after. To the superstores, I guess, 3.6. So after leaving downtown, they were going to Skyway Shopping Center.
They had to drink first before they went.
Drink before Costco.
Makes it,
Um,
makes the experience better.
Relax a little bit and take your time getting across the parking lot, but overall, I mean, I think that's very much in line with, the only other thing I guess I would point out on this chart is the highest traffic times, we're seeing noon to 6. According to this report, Callie is saying, most of the visitors, are coming after 4 p.m. I would say that kind of noon to 6 makes sense. We do not see any pushback whatsoever from visitors in relation to parking. It's all positive. It's just that it's affordable. It's, you know, they're used to coming from bigger cities, so navigating parking has not been challenging. A lot of times, they will either use either one of our visitor center parking lots, so either at the chamber or in Reader's Alley, and they can park for free. But a lot of them use the 2-hour or have no problem with the meters at all. And I think one of the big key differences is a lot of the visitors are exploring and taking advantage of our outdoor recreation opportunities. And so I think there's a little bit of a difference that they also are perfectly fine with walking a little bit, where I think it's more a local challenge to get people to move. I think we have a little bit of a sedentary community, but that's probably my personal opinion, but what else? Oh, yeah, and then the complimentary parking at the chamber. So overall, I think the biggest thing for visitors this was an ask that I recommended was on the old parking map. We had the image of or the icon of the Capitol. And because this map is so often used to orient visitors, it would be amazing to get the Capitol and or Montana's museum icon back on this map. Even though it's kind of a little bit out of the parking realm, because we are the state capital, we end up drawing the Capitol on every single map.
Should buy Sam then.
Exactly, that's the next option. But there's so much real estate down here and it used to be on there that I know it can happen. It would be amazing if it could, even if that meant
The
tourism.
map's being redone because of how the new rate structure and the new parking. So
Great.
once we get the actual, the meters out and all the signs where it needs to be,
Mhm.
then it will coincide with that rollout with the new map.
Great.
So when you wrote down
Thank
the
you.
capital question, put capital on that.
There was a stamp.
I was just checking.
Okay, wait, let me keep us focused.
Okay.
All right,
One question, where did your
wait.
numbers come from?
Oh, yeah.
Minutes, where did the numbers come?
From Placer AI is what it's called. It's a platform, data platform that basically tracks,
AI, is it?
yes.
You keep your GPS turned on your phone.
Mhm.
So that was my follow-up question, because it has the home on there, so it's not, this data is not just tourists, this is everyone coming to downtown.
That is correct.
Okay.
So I did clarify that the visitors, the 1.7 is both local and non-local.
Okay,
The 260,000 is visitor only. And that visitor only is typically outside of the the particular zip code or 50 miles outside of the Helena location.
So what was your visitor number? Out of the
260,000,
1.7 million?
yes.
That's a good number to think about.
Mhm. It is, and the only other thing I would add, just something in talking with staff, as we prepare for this visitor season, I think we can do a better job of, including some downtown parking on our downtown Helena landing page on our Visit Helena website. I think thinking about these PSA videos, it would be a nice place to house them as well to get more exposure and create more awareness. But yeah, overall, I think that, I think if anything, it would be wonderful to take that, sentiment of visitors and somehow transfer it to locals. So that, I mean, I know like with businesses and employees and employee parking is one thing, but I think I would love to change the narrative that there's more happening downtown. We talk more about all the offerings and all the opportunities and less about parking.
Other questions for Andrea? Tourist experience. Christopher, I hope you'll jump in. Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
So with the information, I guess I would have thought the visitors would have been higher. You know, if you're looking at 1.7 million, that says more than a million are locals. So am I reading that right?
Yes.
So we spend a lot of time and energy on visitors.
Mhm.
We talk about that's where money's coming from. But with this information, I think we need to look harder at, you know, it's our locals who are supporting us.
I would
And we put a lot of focus on visitors, which is good. But, you know, those people are coming from home and going back to home are dropping money every day down here. And so, I don't know what that means, but I was surprised that I would have thought there'd be more visitors than just 260,000.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like more.
Yeah,
I mean, sometimes we see upwards of 500 visitors through our Readers Alley Visitor Center a month in the summer, and but yeah, I do think it's local, and I like I said, I think it's just creating that, it's doing more of the storytelling and more of the positive. I think, you know, you guys have dedicated so much time and energy to streamlining the system and the processes, and I think we're in a really good space to yeah, not talk about parking for a while. That's all we do.
I have another question for you. Oh,
This is Christopher.
go ahead, Christopher. Thank you for chiming in.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Is this the information you're presenting, was that included in the email prior, or are we able to get the figures that you stated or in a PDF or something later?
Yeah, you probably didn't see your email. I emailed it to you about an hour before the meeting, so you should have it in your,
Okay,
this,
it's in there. Okay, thank you.
Andrew presented. It's from Callie, but Andrew's presented it.
And I think it would be good to review that, like you said, Sandy, you know, who knows what we're looking at this summer? None of us, we're not there yet. It keeps fluctuating, so
I guess my comment would be that we make sure we pay attention to the locals. While we're going through with rate changes and all that kind of thing, that. You know, the base of our business is people that live here. We need to not go, oh, well, you know, people from out of town, they don't care about $5 an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's our locals, we need to make sure our rate structure helps.
My initial thought is like, how can we charge more to capture these? Because if they think our parking is cheap and we need to invest in our parking infrastructure, maybe we need to rethink some of our rates to have our more desirable, like garage parking, be more expensive for those who are willing to pay for garage parking. Would bat an eye at, more, but that's me editorializing now.
But I've heard someone say, I don't come downtown unless it's on Saturday because there's free parking.
Yeah,
I avoid downtown. I don't understand downtown. So those are the people I worry about because they're the ones going, downtown is expensive. And it's really not.
no,
You can come after 5 p.m. too.
yeah, that would be another agenda, like, if we were to talk about changing the enforcement hours, which is a big deal. That would be a budget impact, a policy impact, staff time impact. And would need like a couple years of lead time.
I don't know about a couple of years, but
A lot of the cities that we look at, they enforce on Saturdays. And there's a few less that enforce on all 7 days a week.
if we could show that the additional revenue made on a Saturday in a year paid at least for the cost of the person to do it, obviously we would want it to be more, because then what's the point if all we're doing is paying for the person? And that's it. But as long as we could do the research and show that it's worth on the revenue side.
I don't think it needs to be a Saturday. I think part of the conversation is people come down here to dine. And when you go to any other city, you pay parking to 6 or 7. If you increase to 6, would you pick up more people dining down here? Would that just push them out of downtown?
Well,
Yeah.
the same conversation has to be had though, because now we're outside of 8-hour workdays, so. We have to have split shifts or something so we would still be looking at capturing that revenue doesn't support having that extra person, forcing for the extra hour or two.
Yeah, let me, okay. Joan, you have a question?
I guess, raising the parking rates to capture tourists.
Controversial.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me, because they're here, 3 months out of the year, 4, do they come in the winter to ski? I mean,
Hell yeah.
but do they come downtown? I
At night.
just, at night, when there's free parking.
Well, they're finished skiing, they come down and drink and eat probably.
Right.
A skier person would probably do that.
I mean, we'd like to fill up that shoulder season. Right now, it's pretty light. I mean, you're right. Yeah, our peak
So-
season is May to end of September.
So. I'm not sure you capture any revenue. Make that worth the change or to confuse people.
Chris, you have a comment or question on this agenda?
I have both.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
So to John's point, I think we could also look at a seasonal rate structure.
Mm,
It could be more expensive in the peak season. And then not as expensive in the off season, so to speak. My question for Andrea would be, do you have comparable data for the other major cities in the state? Or is that something you could get from other like?
I think it would be interesting. Absolutely.
I mean, I know it would be hard to
Don't have
compare
that
like
right now.
us to Kalispell's numbers because they have Glacier and it's.
Right.
But, Missoula and Great Falls, maybe even Bozeman to an extent. Just to see, right, we're at about 12% or so, outside origin to local origin. Be interesting to see what their numbers come out at as far as visitors versus non.
Yeah, I agree. We'll do some research and see what we can come up with.
So you're talking just non-visitors and non-visitors.
Yeah, so the whatever it was, 200 whatever thousand versus 1.7 million. Be interesting to see what their ratios would like to.
Sure. So
any other questions for Andrea or on the tourism topic? Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about tourists?
I don't think so, except for they love downtown and they're happy to be here.
That's what we like.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming and presenting.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it. We may put it on the agenda again, or especially if we're gonna talk about rate changes.
Sure.
Yeah. And what Chris was just saying about looking at other cities. So, about that. David,
Yeah, so just to comment on the rates, since the rates from when looking at different cities are all over the board. Some have a flat rate, some, have hourly parking, some have a graduated rate structure, so that the longer you park, the more expensive it gets. So that you encourage, like Mark was saying, the turnover. One city in, I remember it was Missoula, you have 4 hours max to park downtown. In their pay to park areas, that's it. Otherwise you get a ticket. So like I said, the rate structures are
Kind of
like,
pointed it.
like Chris said too, that there's other places that have seasonal or even peak times. So if you come downtown to, some areas have downtown to park between 11 and 1, you're gonna pay a higher rate than you would from 2 to 3. So the sky's the limit, basically, for looking at how to potentially address these rates. It'll be a pretty in-depth conversation if you want to look at a different rate structure.
so to clarify, in your budget proposal right now, you have the same rate structure and you were just adding a little bit, assuming more monthly permits.
Correct.
For revenue, okay. And your final budget gets presented. Your final budget gets presented to the commission when?
We'll be probably presenting this in May to the commission as a informational meeting,
Okay.
discussion type. But then the final budget gets adopted in June.
Okay. So if we wanted to have, if this committee wanted to spend more time talking about rates and make a recommendation that could be reflected in this year's budget, is that feasible for us to do in April?
Should be, yeah.
Because then you have May to have April to kind of discuss and narrow down, and then you have the May meeting to make your recommendation and push it before, hopefully before our.
We don't know when our meeting yet is to present to the commission.
They go by alphabetical order, so Public Works and Transportation is in May, so
It should be in the latter part of May,
Okay.
so.
But we
you know, our
can
May
do-
meeting is earlier.
Sorry to cut you off. You can do rate changes, because you did, outside of the budget cycle.
Technically, yes.
Okay.
Yes, technically we can, but part of the reason this committee was formed was to have those rate discussions with,
Using the
folks
public
that-
process.
Yes.
Okay, can I just get a head nod from committee members if you want to talk about possible rate changes more in April? Okay, I see one nod.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do some thinking on it with staff about how we talk about it, and maybe we could, since David
It'll
started
be
this region.
Rate change or not rate change and that.
Yeah, like how we would,
Yeah.
yeah, let's dive into rates a little bit more since we haven't done that.
And the big thing I think that we're kind of missing is we have this many spots and this, I mean, how many hours we have available for paid parking? And if we were to say it was this much an hour versus this much an hour, what would we lose or gain? If you can just say, we have a,
Okay, I'm gonna cut you off,
Yeah.
Sandy, because we're gonna move on, but
but that's what I think, it's easy to make, I guess to say, I don't feel like we can make rate changes unless we have some information that says,
I'll do my best think
Yeah.
tank.
yeah, or just, yeah, that doesn't gain us anything, because then we lose something, that's all I'm asking.
Okay. I'm gonna move us on to our annual report recommendation. This is a standing item, and I have sent to you all. I'm gonna share my screen.
I have copies if someone needs them.
I'll take one. So let me think.
You know,
Should have my phone.
You guys need one?
Sure.
2, 1.
Okay, two.
And unless,
Just a second, I can make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So, I have been pushing us, let me add some context again for the group. We are a new committee formed, also in our forming, The city has been cleaning up the process for how boards and committees report to the commission, so they're also trying to figure this out, and we're gonna be right in there and, figuring it out. So I took the template that I got from Danae, for how we can make a recommendation, which seems a little different than the annual report, because it asks for just one recommendation. But in I don't know what to call it, the thing that created us, the charter, it said that resolution, thank you. Said we could make 3 to 5 recommendations. So I just want us to, we're 6 months in, I want us to get in front of the city commission, since a lot has happened in parking in the last 6 months. And we're new, and so, I'm saying this all to say that this is not gonna be our only recommendation this year, I imagine, or this is not gonna be all encompassing. So that's a little bit of my intro. I got comments from all 5 of you. Well, all 4 of you, and then I added my own comments. I sent them all to you guys. And then, I did this draft recommendation, with you all in mind. But it obviously does not reflect all the comments that you said, and I'm gonna pick on Seth. He made a recommendation that we talk about deferred maintenance, but we hadn't talked about that yet in the committee meeting, so that's why I didn't include that. So I tried to just include the recommendations that we've talked about in our past 6 meetings. And after doing some thinking about it, a lot of it has come down to communications, and that users of parking just don't know what's going on, and then that's leading to frustration. And I want to tell staff, where I'm not trying to place brand, you guys are doing a great job with the resources that you have, but that there's obviously a need for more communication in a variety of ways of how to use our parking systems downtown. So that's the first recommendation that I have, and I know that doing more for anything means more money. So that would be, I just put it as increased investment, because I imagine it might be a little bit of staff time, maybe one of your admin person to have some more proactive communication. Your one admin person, or, contracting we're very excited for the partnership with the chamber on the PSA, but, contracting out some communications if needed. Obviously, there's a need for more signage. You guys are working through that with the budget that you have.
To scroll this to where you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about the first sentence, actually.
Okay.
The Parking Advisory Committee recommends an increased investment in communication, signage, and publicly posted information about parking options in downtown Helena. So this sentence is the meat of what I think our recommendation to the commission could be at this time. That we are recommending more investment in communications. So that would be, public outreach communications, signage, physical signs, not printed signs taped to kiosk, which you're making do right now, but signs. And then publicly posted information, which I would also include in the map. So we could, sorry, I'm pointing at you, Andrew, but this map, that is something I would consider a publicly posted piece of information. I'm gonna pause. Committee members, does that sentence work for you? Am I on the right track with that sentence as our recommendation? Just the first sentence, because then I want to talk about part 2 seconds, which is about the smart meters. Joe, does this sentence work for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Sandy, does this sentence work for you?
Yeah. I think if we're just only limited to 1, then that's the basic.
Okay. Seth, does this sentence work for you?
Yes.
Okay. Christopher, are you on? Does this sentence work for you?
I'm on. Sorry, I'm just going through the past right now, but I just want to ask a question real quick. Am I able to add one more item to a recommendation?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay. Okay, it'll be in the form of a question, but also depending on the answer, then it'll be a recommendation. So my question real quick to staff is, do we already have a Facebook page or Instagram page just dedicated for the parking information, or is that tied into the overall city account?
We only have we have the web page that has a specific parking page, but we only have one dedicated, Facebook, Instagram that the PIO.
Okay,
The city,
okay.
yeah, okay.
So my recommendation would be if we could have a separate informational only social media outlet, whether that's Instagram or Facebook, just to push those specific updates regarding parking. Reason being, it would make it easier for people to find that information quicker than to scroll through a city feed with, you know, tens or dozens or hundreds of updates that don't pertain to parking that they're looking for. That would just be my quick suggestion if we could add that.
Thanks, Christopher. I'm gonna, that. I wanna acknowledge your comment that is recommendation of having a parking only social media channel. Yeah, I'll pause. Let's just talk about that right now. David, do you have any insight on that? Is there a city policy that there's only one Facebook and Instagram, or Facebook for the city?
I don't know that there's a city policy that says we can only have one citywide. I would imagine that something like the Civic Center probably has its own thing for all of the events and stuff that they do. But I can tell you that we do not have the time and staff to manage a social media for parking.
Civic Center does.
I would be happy to every once in a while post the correct information on the Helena Classifieds on Facebook for people myself, but that would be about the extent that staff could do.
Okay.
So I'm just
David, yeah,
checking some things with it really quick.
okay.
One, because
Oh, yeah.
that's the first.
Yeah, the limit one is new, and this is a new template, so, for the record, I like to ask forgiveness, so I may just do two and then it's a problem. Okay,
Also, couldn't that be included in the
yeah,
public posted information?
that's what I'm gonna say. So Christopher, I'm liking where you're going, but I'm thinking I'm not gonna call it out specifically. In this recommendation, and I think we could continue to talk with staff. If we make this recommendation, we could work with staff on brainstorming ideas of how they can improve their communications without saying that we wanna recommend the city make a parking specific one. I know I don't feel comfortable with that level of detail in our recommendation right now.
Well, it fits, it's communication.
It does fit under this branch, yeah. Oh, and I wanna acknowledge, Christopher, you can hear me too, your idea of, hotline, and that's why I put communications down here too, because I think there's a lot of good ideas of how we can increase communications. But I want our recommendation to be specific about that we need increased investment in it. What is all the beep?
That's the name.
Oh.
Yes.
Are
So-
more text popping up on the screen? I'm missing it?
Yeah.
Damn it.
It's a good one.
So 3 to 5 recommendations, anything more than 5, she can guarantee that they'll just get lost. And we've always said, you know, to make any recommendations, we had a committee that gave us 100 one time. And so if I pick number 53, everybody, well, why didn't you pick, 82?
Okay.
So 3 to 5, and the commission only has so much bandwidth in the best, so I don't think you're limited to 1,
Okay.
even though there's more than one recommendation in your one sentence there, so.
Well,
Not to be
it
a
is.
grammatic, not to be a grammatic expert, but.
Okay, but here's my recommendation, increase investment in these 3 things.
So that's 3 recommendations.
Okay, so I got 2 more to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, they're gonna wanna hear some background from you,
Yeah,
so like you
I
have
got a
down
little
there, yeah,
background
like you
now.
have down there, so.
okay, staff, I'm gonna ask you, I don't, we're figuring this process out as we go, so I appreciate your patience. Does this recommendation give you 2 heartburn?
No,
No, it's just, will we have enough funds to do what we have planned for our capital and, you know, some of that painting stuff, we'll have to divert that to do some of these things.
Okay.
Some of these I think are not expenditure items, right? Yeah. Improving an investment in communications doesn't need to necessarily mean spending money on something, right?
It can.
Using tools like BID, GBID, other avenues that can help us put out information regularly that have an audience that we don't reach on a regular basis is technically an investment in resources that don't cost us any money. So,
But for like signage, we're already
Yeah.
working on that.
Okay, and you have a line item for signage, right?
Yeah, but so one of the things that we're doing now is, when I drove through the garage one day, I was like, oh, every other beam has second floor. So now every other beam is also gonna have, use the kiosk or the app to pay for your parking. And so,
The narrow where the kiosk is.
well,
maybe on the beam that's right next to the.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a cheap, a stencil is cheap, paint is easy to roll on with the stencil, you know, or spray paint it on or whatever. But those are some of the cheap things that we're trying to do with signage to better. And then the actual pay stations and the gate arms are down now, but the actual gate arm mechanical portion, those will be taken down here shortly too, so there won't be the confusion that I need to pull a ticket someplace or I need to pay here, so
Yeah.
those signs will come down and we'll just increase hopefully awareness that that's where you.
Okay, so I'm hearing you're okay with this and maybe you slightly agree with this. Okay. Okay, so I'm hearing from the committee, we're good with sentence 1. I wanna talk about sentence 2 since it's kind of, and this feels timely in the fact that staff is doing this. Okay, so the sentence I'll read aloud for the record. We also support staff's plan to transition 198 smart meter spots to a mix of hourly pay to park, discounted permit parking, and 2-hour free parking spots. So I want the commission to know that we've been working with you and we support this action. Do you want me to put 180 in there? Is it 180?
I would just say the transition smart meters, because we're not keeping any of them.
You could probably put something more like approximately 200,
For all smart meters.
yeah.
These are just parking meters.
Because we're not keeping.
Smart
any of them.
meters sounds like,
I want everyone else to call them to differentiate them from the kiosks
Well, that's what they actually, that's what they're called in our.
in your budget, so I'll use the word smart.
They're only smart in the fact that you can use a credit card to pay it though. But that information doesn't get.
And then that calculator smarter.
And how smart are they? They're getting cut off and put in spots.
1980s are you smarter than?
It'd be a real smart option for me when I turn one of them into a bubble gum machine. You guys gotta pay me a quarter every time you come to a meeting, you get a bubble gum.
Okay. We also support staff's plan to transition all smart meter spots to a mix, and spots I've been using, I don't know how else to talk about parking. Do you guys?
Spaces.
Oh, spaces.
Because it's one per space, meters.
Spaces to a mix of hourly and some spaces is our word. Okay. An estimated 180. I just want that in there for more the record, but there's quite a few. Okay. Committee members, are we good with this sentence?
I think you ought to include something that says employee parking. The reason I think that is because it's the number that I first got to.
Okay. My struggle with it is that,
Discounted parking.
Well, I have it-
Employees.
I don't wanna use the word employees
Okay.
because, as we talked about in previous committee meetings, that what is an employee? You know, does an attorney who works 8 hours get a discounted employee spot because they're an employee of downtown Helena? Or is it just service employees, or is it, you know, what does it mean to be an employee to get the spot? And so what we were talked about before is that it's like not, we can talk about the spots and say, these are great for when Chef Dan Bay comes in, his hourly employees, please look to these spots. So it's less premium spots, but I'm hesitant to use the word employees because we're not, breaking down our parking availability by type of users. You either pay hourly, or you pay monthly, or you park in a free spot. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Short-term inhabitants.
I was just gonna say short-term parking
Unhoused.
permits.
Huh?
Short-term inhabitants.
Short-term inhabitant, yeah. Cause you don't wanna call them short-term visitors, cause if they're an employee.
No,
They
yeah.
even had one. Yeah.
Well,
Yes, yeah.
I was going along with the short-term thing because we're really talking about those 4-hour spots.
So I was using the term discounted permit parking, because it is discounted.
seems like it falls under that.
Yeah, that's what
That makes
I'm
perfect
saying,
sense.
yes, but we've all been struggling with how to call it. So I've been calling it discounted permit parking, because there's permit parking where you would pay for 8 hours. And then there's this discounted option, which is part-time. So I could put the word discounted part-time.
Or just part-time permits.
Why do you need the discounted? I guess if it's either 4
Well,
Because
4
all,
hours or 8.
They're
because you
cheaper
can't
per
buy,
hour.
you can't buy 4 hours anywhere. You can't buy 4 hours in the Sixth Avenue garage. You can't buy 4
Right.
hours. So it's discounted because we've identified these slightly fringe streets. That, I don't know.
Because
I hear your
everybody
concern,
wanted discounted.
Yeah.
Discounted rates for the employees, and
Yeah.
I think that's where.
I think
we're at.
discounted
I
part-time.
agree, I see where you're coming from, and I think it is, I mean, that's what we're using this discounted parking for, we're trying to address this issue.
Yeah,
Discounted part-time, is that what we're saying?
Because I guarantee you, somebody's gonna bring it up, somebody from the commission will ask, and we'll say, well.
oh yeah, and we can answer that.
We can answer the
Um,
question, yes, that's what the discounted,
So
Parking.
those,
What if you did like discount
so
part-time?
if the transition happens, it would be 107 spots. There's only 16 now, so it's a big jump. And I can have this data available. Yes,
And
Dan.
just to comment, we can track these with our software and visually, and, if they're full all the time, then we can have a discussion of, where we can put additional, parking. If they don't fill up, then, I guess people don't wanna walk, a block extra.
well, and I think I mean, just based on this parade of people that have come by talking about how they need it. I think it is a communication issue. If they don't fill, then that's a communication. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go ask Dan after this meeting. I don't know if he probably talked to one of you two. But he asked for the Sixth Avenue, they said it was full. If the staff could be like, oh, but you know what, we have Cruise, which touches Sixth Avenue, and there are this many spots left for $30 versus 95 and Sixth Avenue, there's some of that customer service
It's-
piece.
It's really true that people don't know.
They don't know yet,
They
yeah,
don't know yet.
even though you've had it actually for a while, it's only 16 spots, but you've had it for a while. Okay, I hear myself doing crosstalk. So we're talking, Sandy, what is your
Well,
comment?
I think the big thing is the communication is we need to get a little feet out on the walking mall and downtown and talk to the business owners. And say, here are the 3 ways you can pay for parking in town. And that's only gonna take time and a pamphlet. We could put all the PSAs and signs we want, but until we go to each owner and say, or if someone has a problem. Say, okay, Seth, what do you have? I got 15 employees that come in this hour. Well, this would be a good opportunity for you. And if your staff could do that, that would be great. But I think there's a piece there we need to get through that. We're trying to make it work for you. We're putting places out there. Tell your employees this is where they can park. Look, Dan, you can pay for 4 employees on 1 permit. For $30, you can park 4 employees if you manage your permit well. And just having someone, as we're looking at some of those bigger places, so that we can get down the chatter that there's not a spot here. I mean, the reality is no matter where we put it. Someone's gonna complain, but we need to, I think, educate. I'm not worried about the downtown visitors. Or the downtown people. We need to go and talk to the people who are buying permits and say, look, I see you bought, 25 Sixth Street garage permits. Do you have part-time employees? Maybe you could do half of those. It would reduce but I mean, I think if we went out and reached out and said, what are your needs? And we said that would fit this one, this one, this one, that would be huge. And cheap, take some time. But we can just work our way through the permit people. And the people who are having questions.
Can we? is there any reason why we couldn't see the list of permit holders? Do you guys run a support report of who, or is that private information?
It's
Think on that and maybe,
not necessarily private, but I wouldn't be comfortable just giving you the information. And I would.
You can do public information.
But we could also, you could also
Yeah.
send something out that says, we would like to talk to you and discuss what your needs are. We have a new rate structure.
Yeah.
We
So,
would like to
We're
talk
getting-
to you, please
I'm
call
gonna
us.
pause a little bit, because, and I know
Yeah.
myself do it too, we're getting in the brainstorming, so I wanna get us through this recommendation so we can actually vote on it. Okay. So I've changed the sentence to still just say discounted permit parking, and I'm happy to clarify in the meeting that this is where we're talking about employee parking options.
Did we say part-time though?
No, I didn't put it in part-time, but I could,
I think
does it
part-time.
need part-time? Can I just see thumbs up on part-time, or is discounted monthly? Discounted permit parking work? Seth and Joe,
I'm okay with discounted parking,
okay,
or permit parking.
Seth,
I mean, it would have to be another. It's discounted permanent parking and,
you're going, how many, somebody?
Yeah, I think,
The writer,
I
I'm
think
gonna leave it
let's
that way.
just, let's leave it the way it is. You know,
Great.
somebody's gonna ask the question.
Great, and I'll answer the question. Okay, so I hear no other comment on these two sentences. That everyone feels good about these two for our recommendations right now. The other recommendations that, the other one. Oh, Christopher the hotline, way signing. Signs, yeah, those are all communications. Sandy, yours is. Infrastructure, oh, ADA, okay. The other one I wanted to talk about was yours. Seth, about. Infrastructure and ADA, I don't feel comfortable putting that in there yet.
Okay.
Okay. Just wanna make sure you feel good on that.
Could I,
Yep.
something I didn't add, but are we gonna put anything in about exploring the residential parking issues?
Well-
That's one of our,
Yeah, okay, so let's move to the next. Do you have any, are we good with just these two recommendations? I think so.
Dave's got his hand up.
Oh,
I just wanted to
Yeah.
address one thing for Seth's ADA stuff.
yeah,
Some of that is included into our capital stuff.
yeah,
And it's part of our CIP, so we're addressing it as quickly.
That's a separate CMP funding. Where is it?
not a separate funding.
But it'll come up in our, lots. or
let's
garages.
explain this in detail when we
Yep.
go into more detail about deferred maintenance next month. Okay, so background. This is where we can add more information, and so I wondered if we wanted, I did wanna make a recommendation about residential, because the
No, I
survey is
agree
out
with
there,
right.
but,
Other things we've looked into, maybe not.
yeah, so here what I have on background right now is, I'm scrolling too much. The parking advisory committee was formed in June in response from concerns from businesses, individuals, Chamber of Commerce and Downtown Business Improvement District. I feel like that's a fair sentence to summarize what happened kind of before my time. We held our first meeting, and I wanted to just acknowledge that some of the most significant changes happened before we actually had a meeting, so we did not weigh in on those changes, which included rate adjustments, the one zone, removal of the gate arms in the 670 garage, and the license plate enforcement for permits and hourly parking. I could add a second sentence here saying, thus far, we have discussed in committee meetings, residential permits, tourism. And just kind of, like, if you want a second sentence about what we've been looking at, would that be helpful?
I think, but
That's fine.
I'm just looking at the present situation.
As you're typing, there's just
Yeah.
informational thing, there's a residential parking district discussion. So,
Oh, really? On the commission agenda? Huh, okay.
It was a
Does
big
that mean-
item from last year
Oh, they're bringing it back already. Okay.
When is it?
on Wednesday. It's just a particular sidewalk district.
Still needs, Have you?
residential district.
Yes, sir.
Residential parking.
Is that something?
It
we-
was that Matt brought it, is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about? The issue Matt brought it. That's-
There's, I don't think same employees.
Well, I wanted to use that word then to suggest that we talked about employees.
Employee rates for,
But no, I can see. Yeah.
well, it's not even just part-time, I mean, it's, we want to say we've addressed the employee issue.
Part-time and full-time.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't,
Employee parking issues.
or just reduce.
Most of them are,
Working class. Workforce parking. Section.
that part,
Achieve a circle on workforce parking.
oh.
Sorry,
Oh,
Becky's already turned
meter,
down his Facebook page.
EMS. Locations, I'm trying to think back, does anybody else, I can look through the minutes, but I don't really wanna, I wanna kind of find out what this. We've had someone come and talk about the kiosk locations, we've had someone talk about, maybe I'll just put deferred maintenance.
I said we need to put deferred maintenance, because we have talked about the need for deferred maintenance and loan payment.
And parking.
Yeah, parking debt and.
That's not, okay, parking needs. Any other,
Geez, about TIF. Money?
No, that's,
well, I mean, Rex made that,
just brought it up, yeah.
yeah, we've had it.
We've, yeah,
I'm gonna put it in there because I do wanna talk about tips on
yeah.
here. Any other public comment I'm missing right now that's easy to pick up? Or agenda items that I'm missing that we've spent a long time on? Do you feel like this is enough background? Okay.
It's easier to summarize your background stuff and let them kind of ask the questions.
Yeah. So this shows that we've been talking about stuff, is what I want them to know. Okay, so present situation, this one was hard to add.
So,
We've reviewed this stuff with you. Yes, David?
so this is the notice memo format.
Yeah.
I've already done this.
So do I need to do
No.
anything present situation or advantages or disadvantages?
You
Can I
guys
just do
just
background?
talk about your committee recommendations and give them some background on why those recommendations were important. And what you guys have done in your first 6 months, I think is all that needs to be done.
Okay,
I started seeing all this and I'm like, this is the notice, it's already been submitted and it's already gonna be in. And
yeah,
I just need a very brief thing, so.
okay, then I'm just trying to follow the template. She said, I wondered about this myself. So if I take this out, present situation, and I'm just not gonna answer any of these other questions. Is that what you,
I would just delete all that.
like, not even,
Present situation all the way down.
In the headlines. get rid
should
of
I,
it.
should I keep this part? This sentence?
No. So that, those pieces that we have, those are for like public meeting, if we need to have a public hearing.
Yeah,
So.
so then you could be
every-
like, this was heard this many times, this is
Yeah.
why we're doing
So just
this.
delete everything all the way up to your period on your background.
I don't need this sentence somewhere on here?
I mean, you can send them that we've been meeting monthly, but, or you've
No,
been
they
meeting
don't
monthly, yeah.
Yeah, this is gonna be pretty quick, right? And then there'll be questions.
Yeah, I just wanna. You wanna know what we've been up to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're just we got a proposal. And with 2 recommendations, and one is just saying that we support you. And then a little bit of background.
I would just put this on like letterhead.
What
Or-
letterhead, your letterhead, my letterhead?
We can send you the city letterhead that says parking.
Think advisory committee letter.
Okay, sure, I'll make it.
I can send,
Like a debate thing.
I'll talk to Danae, but usually you would just put it on a letterhead and say parking advisory committee recommendations.
Great, so if I send this text to you today, can we just put it on letterhead?
Yeah.
Okay. That's our staff, because then you can help connect it to the name. Okay, great. So, any final comments from committee members on the text that I have in front of you on the screen?
You can take out the draft.
I know I would, but we're gonna vote and then I'll take that part.
Just thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Putting this together.
Okay. Christopher, any other comments?
No,
So I would like for the record, if somebody would like to move that we submit this recommendation to the committee. This recommendation as written.
Okay, I make a motion that we submit board recommendation as finalized during our March 13th meeting. To the city.
Anybody want to second that?
I second.
Oh, I'm gonna give John the second this time. Sorry, Christopher.
Hey, Chris.
Okay. Any
Stealing
final,
stuff.
oh, wait. Okay, I'm gonna do slightly out of order, but just for the record. So we have a motion and a second. Any public comments on the motion we are about to vote on? Great, seeing and hearing no public comment. Any final comment from committee members on this motion? Yes, Joan.
I just have a question whether we should all be there when you present this or just you or
Just wait.
is that outlined?
No,
Okay.
but I want to just do the motion first.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so hearing no discussion on the motion, I will do a roll call vote, because I think we were actually supposed to roll call votes for anything of action. Seth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Joan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sandy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Christopher, how do you vote?
I,
Right, and I also vote aye. Unanimous, it's passed. We have approved this recommendation to present to the city commission next Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Okay, so now.
Motion's approved or motion's passed? Wait, what?
Pick one. You can- yeah, I don't know.
Motion passed, it's 5-0.
Oh, yeah, you put pass, I think that's in the template. Okay, Joe, so, let's ask David and Chris, how does this typically go in the admin meetings? I saw the HCC one last month.
So for a group that large, they typically just send a representative. I think, you guys are small enough that if you all wanted to attend, you could. If you just wanted to have Julia represent you there, and then that's fine too. I think whoever speaks, you should just choose one person to speak and give the recommendation. If you all want to be there to support if there's.
There's a water
In the
Yeah.
past, it's just been the representative that's presented the recommendations and then just prepare to, answer questions.
Well, if it's good with you all, I'm happy to represent this group and give this recommendation, but if you want to come join, I'd love to come. I also want to make comment on digital learning day, so. That might not help us out.
This is when,
This is Wednesday at 4.
would it help to,
Danny, if you want to come too, it's always interesting to hear the discussion.
yeah, I'll come, it's what, Wednesday or that.
Wednesday, the 19th. At 4 PM in room 326.
I just think, it doesn't hurt, I think what people really need to get is that we're all working together. It's not us and them anymore, at least I think it's not us and them. And so I think if we come and say we're supporting you, we're just, that will go a long ways with the commission.
Okay. thank you all for that.
That's
Okay,
the admin meeting.
that's the
Yes.
admin meeting. Okay, so. Sorry, just let me see notes here.
326. Yes.
All right, now we have upcoming meeting items. We're gonna dive into deferred maintenance and the structural assessment report, and staff is gonna send it to us beforehand.
Mhm.
The residential survey, we forgot to ask that, did that go live? Or I sent you the approval yesterday, so it will go, when will the survey go live?
So Jake is tweaking the survey with your comments and a couple of comments that we came up with after, and then it should go live. Hopefully at the end of this week, if not, it'll go out early next week and we'll run it for 3 weeks and we'll just, might be a little rush to get you the results next.
Well, should we just move it to May and then you don't have to rush on that? Is there a rule on like how?
We can play that one by ear a little bit, because we can try to monitor the results as we go along.
Okay.
And formulate them, and then it won't be too much work at the end.
So you feel okay keeping that on the April agenda?
For now,
Okay.
yeah.
If we start getting thousands of comments, we'll be like, well, for sure.
Not thousands of people, anyways, okay, so we'll, and,
Yeah.
alright, so we have deferred maintenance and then, rates, we
Rates, I said
wanted,
rates should be on there.
we wanted to talk about rates.
Mhm.
And if we were to adjust, like, how could we adjust them, if we could adjust them? I want to just start having a conversation, so I want you to think about what data you could bring us. And,
It might be helpful over the course of the next couple of weeks if committee members, if you have ideas, to shoot them over to us in the next couple of weeks so that we can look at other communities that might be doing something similar. And then we can present that to you along with, you know, what we're seeing, what we think might be.
I mean, if you have an idea of changing specifically the rate structure, and you want me to be able to do some math ahead of time to give you an answer on what the effect might be, send them over.
Do you want a consensus of question or just us just shoot them to you? You guys can decide whether they're duplicate or not.
We'll try to do the best we can to answer them all, but yeah, let's not do consensus because
and we don't wanna take up too much more time, and we've done a lot of this work already. If you have some of the, I mean, I remembered in September, you presented some of this rate math that you've already done, if you could send it to us beforehand, so we could look at the work you've already done, so we have a understanding of the rates. Cause you did some of that math with the 15 and where the
Yeah.
revenue is coming and where the permits coming from, I think that would be helpful. Okay, so we got 3 things on the next month's agenda. Okay.
How do you want people to just email you?
Yeah, send- Typically, if you don't hear back from me within a day or two, send me another one.
You get to reply in my email.
Well, because he does first.
You're welcome to. Okay, public comment. Any public comment for the BID? Any second public comment? This is your first public comment.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Anyone else, public comment? Joe? No. No. Christopher, anything else you want to say before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
No,
Great. Thank you for being on remote. Sandy, you have additional
On the
comments?
parklet rates, we'll put that parklet question in the rates question. Is that part of when you talk about parklets?
Oh, yeah, are those
Is that-
parking purview? Yeah, I guess they are, because
Yeah,
they're parking spots.
So do we put that in the rate, in our rate discussion?
we'll bring it up.
Yeah, if you could give us a little brief presentation on parklets to get us up to speed.
That was,
The form, I've seen it online.
The rate right now is
Don't.
$75
No matter where.
To have a park per spot
Per
per park.
space.
How much, David?
$75 a month per space.
And there's not a food truck rate currently.
No, if they're taking up parking, they're
They're-
paying the
yeah.
parking just like everybody else.
Got it.
So parklet and a food truck, they would take up, how many spaces they take up?
Parklets typically are 2.
It is 5:59. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
No,
Oh,
Tell me what-
Sandy, I mean, Joe, no.
what is a parklet?
Oh, we.
I'm really out of this,
Put a
okay.
Blackfoot, put a Blackfoot.
When they have the food
They
trucks
exist.
there?
A patio.
Patio
Oh,
street.
In front of the gold bar. Where they
Yeah,
got-
right.
Patio in the street.
There.
Okay.
All right, now, any motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Seth has moved. Joan seconds. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Oh,
Bye.
it's adjourned.
Way to go.
Bye, Christopher. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.